Welcome to Embedded. This is Alicia White. My co-host is Christopher White. And for all of those people out there who have wondered, when I ask people for their final thought, does that mean that we are killing them and eating them afterwards? I have repeat guests on this show for you. And by guests, I mean, oh my God, this is going to be so confusing, but it will be fun. Welcome to the Embedded 200th episode.
Yay!
Woohoo!
Is that what I was supposed to do?
Yeah.
Okay. I should have popped a balloon or something, but I don't have it.
Where's your drum set? Okay, so I want to make sure you hear everybody's voices. As I said, I'm Alicia. Christopher.
Hello. Everybody should know what I sound like.
That's true. Elizabeth.
Hello, everybody.
Andrei.
How's it going, eh?
Alvaro.
Hello.
And Svec.
Hi there.
Did anybody else creep in? Oh, good. Good.
No.
So only the imaginary people that are here.
I don't know. I could go through your Skype contacts and just start kind of adding people to the call if you like.
I was hoping the cat would join us for this one too.
Ooh.
I can work that in later.
Yeah. Okay. So since we have such a big crew, and since many of you have been on the show multiple times, I want really short introductions. You know, hello, I'm such and such, and I do such and such, and I like such and such. Something pretty short. Alvaro, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. I'm Alvaro. I'm an electrical / firmware engineer, and I like cheese.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Alvaro Prieto, right?
Yep.
Okay. Andrei, you're next.
I'm going to take a while. Hello, I'm Andrei Chichak, also known as Andrei from the Great White North. I'm not an engineer, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn last month. I write programs for embedded computer systems, mostly in regulated industries like medical devices, petrochem, and automotives. In my spare time, I write a column for the embedded.fm website and occasionally teach an introductory embedded systems class at a local makerspace in Edmonton, Canada. I got my degree in computing science from the University of Alberta and have 22 years of experience in embedded systems and another 9 in tech ops. I make kites for fun, mostly of ripstop, spinnaker cloth, and carbon fiber, and I'll stop.
Wow.
Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I work in embedded firmware, and I have been in the industry since the year one.
Year one. All right. Svec?
I'm Chris Svec, and I've worked in embedded software since the year. I'm not sure what the reference is. I've worked in embedded software for a while. I worked on chip design since then, and so I guess I'm slowly working my way up the stack, very slowly.
For fun, and don't you also have a blog?
I do. I forgot the fun part. I write a series on the Embedded FM blog, which is called Embedded Software Engineering 101, which is sort of a introduction to embedded systems for people who maybe have some programming experience, maybe have some software experience, but definitely do not have any embedded systems experience. And for fun, I play bass and run.
Okay, so...
Run from what?
Like physical move your body?
Right.
Oh, that's weird.
That is really weird to do for fun.
And all of these people have been on the show before, right? So we should mention that they've been on the show before and link in the show notes to all their previous shows.
I will link in the show notes to all their previous shows, and we may talk about their shows.
Well, it's great to have all you. Thanks for doing this. Bye.
No, we have lightning round before we go.
See you in a couple hundred more.
Yeah.
So lightning round. I think the only way to do this is for you all just to shout out your answers at some random interval offset, sort of like Ethernet.
And then we'll back off?
Yeah, something like that.
Do we do collision detection?
So 5 second back off, 10 second, 1 second.
Exponential.
Random.
Exponential.
Okay, the first one.
Cat.
Penguins, pangolins, or terrapins?
Penguins.
Oh, terrapins.
What?
I don't know what the middle one is.
I'm not a guest. You're looking at
You're
me.
not going to answer?
Oh, okay. I'll answer.
The Andros penguin.
What was the question?
Penguin.
What was the question?
Pangolin, terrapin, penguin.
Penguin.
Penguin, pangolin, terrapin.
Penguin.
All right. Thank you, Sherlock. And I would choose pangolin. Fuzzy logic, digital logic, or analog?
Digital
No.
logic. No.
Okay. Engineering or management or other?
Engineering.
Engineering.
Other.
People.
People? Oh, yeah. You have some theories about be nice and all of that. So that must be Svec.
Yeah,
who's
that's
like,
never worked
No,
before.
No. I have theories as to what it takes to actually get products out the door, and it involves
Robots.
engineering and management and robots. It does involve robots.
Okay. How many siblings do you have?
Two.
One.
Two that I know of.
That's true. Okay. One that I know of.
One that I'm pretty sure of.
One that I know of, and two that I don't.
Last movie that you saw?
Guardians of the Galaxy
The
2.
Man from Nowhere.
What was the last Bond movie? Whatever the Bond movie was, most recent one.
That
Wow.
was Never
that's
Say
a
Never
long time
Again.
ago.
Moonraker?
Moonraker. No. It was
The last Star Wars.
Wait, Rogue One or Force
Yeah.
Awakens? You have to be very specific here.
No.
Oh, Jesus.
Why? He said the last Star Wars.
You guys
Oh,
don't
and so
watch
of
a lot
course that would be
movies.
Rogue One. Yeah.
I'm up to 97 this year so far.
Well,
Wow.
except
I saw one at Christmas.
but the one you mentioned, Alvaro, is not new. So it's not like we knew that you. I mean, as far as I could tell, you hadn't seen a movie since like 19. What year did that come out? 70 something.
Man from Nowhere is 2010.
How could Alvaro
That's a
have not
Korean
seen a
movie.
movie since the 70s?
I know.
I wasn't alive. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't ask for age, but maybe I should have asked for decade. Alvaro's the youngest, we all know.
Oh, we all know. Yes.
And last one of these, and maybe we should go in order here. A novel or some sort of fiction or movie that you saw in the last year that you found really cool. Christopher.
You have to. It's a lot of people. You got to.
I
Go
know.
around.
I got to call on people.
Okay, this is just off the top of my head. This is not necessarily the best thing I've read, but I read a young adult novel in the last year that was kind of amusing called The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. And it is from the perspective of the high school students in a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-like situation who are not the heroes.
Yes, it was really good. I recently read Robopocalypse, which was kind of like, okay, we'll get there eventually, and I hope that the robots don't kill us all. And then I started working on some machine learning stuff, and now I'm afraid, and I'm starting to stock up on weapons. Elizabeth?
I've been reading a bunch of Harlan Coben thriller mysteries and recent CJ Cherryh. None of them have any, social value or anything like that, but it's entertaining. Pure escapism.
Svec?
Sci-fi, I read a book called The Three Body Problem, which is actually, it's a trilogy of books. I read all three. It's by a Chinese science fiction author, and I don't think I've read any non-Western science fiction author's work before, and it was great. The books are great. I feel like it felt different than the science fiction that I normally read, which is all like Western, Western science fiction. I wish I could have read the book not knowing that it was written by a Chinese author as opposed to an American author, so I could trust my feeling that this seems like it was written from a different perspective than every other sci-fi book I've ever read. But obviously, I knew that it was, quote-unquote, an Eastern author versus a Western author, so I had that going into it. But fantastic books. All three of the Three Body Problem trilogy were great books.
Alvaro?
Does this have to be a book or
No, it was some sort of fiction.
fiction?
So movies
I-
count.
Plays,
Movies, songs,
mimes.
YouTube videos.
Well, it's a Netflix TV show, but it's Trollhunters. It's a little animated show that was a lot of fun
Is this,
by Guillermo del Toro.
trolls like the ones that you spin and their hair goes everywhere?
Not from Guillermo del Toro, it's not.
Oh, good point.
But it's still kind of more for kids, not as terrifying as some of his other work.
Cool. Andrei?
I'm going to take this down a notch. For nonfiction, unfortunately, it's the definitive guide to ARM Cortex M3 and M4 processors by Joseph Yu.
No, that's fiction.
And no, for fiction, it's HTML5 in easy steps.
Oh, man,
No,
Chris stole your joke.
My reference stuff has just been stacking up, and I'm kind of plowing through that.
Chris Gammell?
I asked, so he said he might come, but I don't think he did.
Oh.
So it's sort of sad. And then I
Could have
asked
had
him
three Chris's.
I asked him to record something ahead of time, and then I asked him to just record I have no comment, and we were just going to keep playing that. But apparently he has a life or something, and I don't know, he's traveling.
Moved to the big city, and suddenly you got things to do.
Exactly. Okay, so now I have questions about, I don't know, what we do. I mean, we all sort of work in embedded systems.
Sort of. Who does this sort of apply to?
Well, the sort of work applies to me.
Yep.
Work. I mean, there's sort of embedded, there's sort of work, there's embedded sort of, there's embedded work. It's a permutations thing.
So how do you describe what you do to someone non-technical?
Is this a free-for-all? Or?
Whoever answers first wins. And the points don't matter.
Oh, I was about to ask what I win.
I tell them that I program computers, but not the desktop kinds, the ones that you don't notice, like the ones in your car or a thermostat, or if I've done my job right, you don't even know that there's a computer involved.
Yep.
They like that.
Yeah.
I usually tell them I'm a professional geek, and that's usually good enough. If people seem a little more interested, then I say, oh, I work for a company called iRobot. And if their eyes don't glaze over, I say, oh, we make this thing. It's like a vacuum cleaner. It's called a Roomba. And then either they will say, oh, I have one, or something like that. Or again, their eyes will glaze over, and then I'll move on.
Yeah, the eyes glazing over is the main thing for me. I can now say I work for Fitbit, and people say, oh, I've heard of Fitbit. My mother loves her Fitbit. What do you do for Fitbit? And I say, I'm a firmware engineer, and then the eyes glaze over, and we're done.
Yeah, same thing for iRobot for me. It's nice having a product you can actually point to. But yeah, you start talking about what you do, and it's kind of like, well, moving on.
It was much easier for me when I worked at Apple. It's like, what do you do? I can't tell you. Done.
Yeah, I've finally realized that it's easiest when my sister asks me things if I just say I can't tell you. It's like, so do you have a release date for your product? Yes. What is it? Can't tell you.
Oh, for me, it was they don't tell me these things. I'm not allowed to know. So you can ask me all you want. I don't know.
Even better.
So how do you describe what you do, Alvaro?
Yeah, I work on program. I write code for tiny chips, basically, little computers that don't have an operating system necessarily, kind of thing. But yeah, here in Silicon Valley, it's a little bit easier to explain. But
yeah, are there any non-engineers in Silicon Valley?
I've heard of rumors. Yes,
I live in an old blue-collar neighborhood, and what you do for a living is just not a conversation.
It is sort of weird that is a little bit how we define ourselves in this industry sometimes. Or maybe it's just how much I do it, that my job and my identity are overlapped so much.
I think that's very, very common. It's just people in the neighborhood know my husband's a teacher and they know what that means. And
he's an elementary school teacher. So like half of them had him at some point in their lives.
or have a nephew or niece that did. That is absolutely true. But, I mean, it's honestly an old-fashioned enough neighborhood that there are a lot of neighbors that just, it's never occurred to them that I do work, let alone that they're interested in what I might do for work. So the answer to where do you work tends to be San Francisco rather than, anything about what I do or what company I work for, which is kind of cool. It's very different, a very different environment from the environment at work.
I wonder if in tech circles, the party question, oh, where do you work? Who do you work for? Where do you work? What kind of software? What kind of hardware? Whatever. I wonder if that, identity wrap up in your work as your identity is more common in tech, or is it as common in other fields as well?
I don't know. That certainly happens in tech here. Like, that's the first thing people ever ask. Like, what do you do? And depending on where you are, they'll be talking about funding and VCs and all that stuff. Whereas in other places, you might focus on hobbies or kids or whatever, something else. But the first question isn't, what do you do?
It's true. Moving over from Silicon Valley to closer to the beach, that is no longer the first question people ask you. And it was a little odd because, that was, it was my go-to. And now I have to be like, so do you have kids? Have you lived here long? The random chit-chat.
How's the weather?
The weather's beautiful.
Look for yourself.
And I do understand the eyes glazing over part. I worked for Crossbow making inertial measurement units. And I sat next to somebody on an airplane, and they clearly wanted to be one of these let's chat the whole time people. And I thought about lying and saying I was an insurance salesman. And then I just admitted that I worked on inertial measurement units, and they didn't talk to me at all. The fact that I was going to Southern California to work on race cars and inertial measurement units, that part I left out of the story.
Yeah, try to tell somebody you work on routing protocols sometime.
Oh yeah.
You want to see eyes glazing over.
I'm just so pleased that I now can go 2 sentences before the eyes glaze over.
Right. Oh, I've seen those in stores. Fine.
So one of the things that I like about working in embedded systems is that it's not necessarily just a computer. It does more than that. And the applications are often interesting. And even the locations you end up with are interesting. Like that time I melted my hiking boots on the Mojave Desert in the middle of a bomb range. I wondered if anybody else has any, amusing stories that they can think of that goes along with being in the field or some application of what you're working on. Andrei, do you have that?
Yeah. I was working on this USB keyboard glove project for the computer gaming market and writing all the firmware for that. And at the same time, we were working on a competition project with DARPA. And we were at this big meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina. And you got people there from, they're the DARPA researchers and people from our team. And the other team was from Lockheed. And a part of the project was to put together a hand gesture recognition system. And, of course, we're the Canadians in the crowd. So we just sort of took the table at the back to stay out of the way. And I'm sitting there working on the code for for the glove and trying to get the funky little LED effects going. Meanwhile, the Lockheed people have no idea what we're working on because a part of their project is to work on their own system. And we're these people from Canada, and I've got this glove on with wires sticking out all over it. And they have no idea what we're supposed to be, other than every time they were standing up at the front waffling about their progress, I'm making my little hand go blink, 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 pew, pew. It was a fun meeting for us.
Sort of like when other people distract you in the middle of what you're focused on?
Yeah, that would be good. Two can play at this game, Chauncey.
All right. Who's next with the story?
Svec, You're up.
I've spent most of my career working on either designing chips or writing software that goes in chips, and so I sat in my chair in a cubicle for most of my career. I don't
That's hilarious. Oh, sorry.
It really is. It really is. Open offices. Now those are hilarious.
Oh, no.
No,
Sorry,
please
Alvaro.
no. A shout from the dark. Please no. Elizabeth, you were going to start something.
Well, it's hard to know which story. None of them are technical, but there's the traveling to Nice and taking quite a while to realize that the people that are randomly standing on street corners wearing very conservative clothing that, is sort of buttoned up to the neck and skirts halfway down their calves, but women standing there at the same place every day were, in fact, transvestite hookers. That took us several days to understand why nobody else was walking the route that we were walking to get from the hotel to the restaurant.
I didn't know where this
Unexpected.
was going to go, but yes, that was a little unexpected.
That's a little bit better than finding out that tantalum capacitors are polar by having one blow up in my head.
I think it was my first job out of college. We did a fingerprint filing system for New Scotland Yard and got to travel to New Scotland Yard to install it. And that was kind of cool. But of course, all I remember is being there. I don't remember anything about New Scotland Yard. And then I remember the stories about the previous system before I was there that was installed at the NSA or the CIA or one of those alphabet places. And before the team went to install it, there was somebody who came to explain what rules you had to follow. And for the period of time that you were involved in the installation, you weren't supposed to interact with any of your friends or acquaintances who happened to be foreign nationals. And during the conversation, one of the engineers turned to the other and said, "George, does that mean I can't talk to you for the next 2 months?"
Exactly.
And the trainer was very distressed. Turned out that the people who were planning on traveling had to be reorganized.
Whoops.
And, the one who was an American citizen, but whose parents were registered communists couldn't go. And the one who was actually a Swiss citizen couldn't go. And it was all very disturbing for the poor people from the Alphabet Agency. And then there was the pulp and paper industry show where when we finally unpacked our giant display, because we were a relatively large company, there were 2 extra boxes. And they were labeled for booth 17C. And since I didn't have anything better to do, I wandered down to the square that was labeled 17C, where there was 2 gentlemen from a small company who were sitting looking very, very sad. So making their day better by telling them we had their boxes was the best thing about the entire trip.
Oh,
Mental note, skip the pulp. Yeah, maybe don't go to that conference. So one of the things, Chris, do you have a story?
I have many stories.
You do. I'm sorry.
And Alvaro didn't say anything.
Oh, true. Okay,
You're just
sorry.
skipping over to us.
You're right.
He's a foreign national.
Yeah.
I'm a U.S. citizen now.
Yay!
But yes, I am a foreign national.
Perfect timing. Oh, sorry. So I'll condense 2 of my stories. Both of them have to do with people may not realize how difficult it was to hire engineers in 1999 because all the engineers had been hired.
Right. Pre-bubble.
So this was a period I was working at a startup, and we were interviewing, hundreds of people, and they were all the best people because that was who was out there looking for jobs in 1999. So two of them, one of them got hired, and I didn't interview this person. He was subsequently escorted out of the building by the sheriff, who came in with shotguns. So that was the fun story, is looking up from your desk and seeing the sheriff there with a shotgun out escorting Beef Wellington, which was his name.
Which I don't feel bad saying, because that doesn't seem like a real name.
It doesn't, does it? You'd think that maybe that wouldn't get through the first round of background checks, but when you're desperate for chip designers, you hire Beef Wellington.
Did he go by Beef?
He did. And he was wanted on drug charges in Colorado, so I assume that's where he went back to. And then the other time was when I was sometimes when you interview people, they have little nervous tics. And you don't know quite how to deal with them sometimes, because they can be quite odd. And this man twisted his nipples throughout the entire interview. It was extremely distracting. And I didn't know how to end the interview. Technically, he was also terrible, because none of the people interviewing at that point were any good, because everybody had jobs. But
Right.
so this was the 90s. So I'm not sorry to see that era kind of go.
Wow.
Yeah, my least favorite interview candidate was the one who took a bathroom break after every hour interview. I mean, you always offer
That's
a
a
bathroom
good way
break,
to
but
kill time. Yeah.
yeah, mostly people, accept once or twice. And he would go to the bathroom and he'd come back all peppy.
Wow.
Warning sign. Warning sign.
Was he sniffing a lot?
I didn't.
I did request an interview at Google. In fact, I might as well name that name, or request a bathroom break during an interview at Google, and they didn't know where it was.
Oh, well.
Oh no.
Yeah, that was kind of bad.
But it's not a boys' club. It's very diverse.
We had a person that we called in for an interview, and I made the call. This guy had the highest grades in computing science that year, and it's like, hey, is Dave available for an interview? Oh, he hasn't got out of bed yet. Well, when he gets up, could you get him to give me a call? So eventually he gives me a call and is like, well, we'd like you to come in for an interview. Would 9 o'clock be okay? And it's like, well, that's a bit early for me. It's like, well, that's okay. How about 10? 11? Oh, I should be able to make it for 11. So he finally rolls in and take a look at his resume, and it's like, you don't have anything for your summer job for last year. It's like, oh, yeah. Well, did you go on a mission or something? It's like, no, I just couldn't get motivated to look for a job. And it's like, okay. Asked him a couple more questions, and then it pretty much came down to, I don't want this guy to work for me. I don't want to have to chase him every morning to get him into work.
And there endeth the story.
There endeth the story.
And we still don't have a story from Alvaro.
I mean, I can give you some interview stories, not as terrifying, but I do remember firmware engineer candidate. I do some simple questions, and some of them have to do with the size of a variable. And I found out that apparently a byte is 4 bits long, and he was very sure of this.
Very sure.
And it was terrifying. And of course, I think he made one more interview after mine, and then he was gone. But I was fairly new at interviewing, so I was just kind of like in shock.
Yeah, the ones that argue with you are the weirdest.
I haven't had those.
Stick around,
I've had
kid.
the ones that are just quiet. I try to avoid interviewing if possible. It's not.
Yeah, the ones that answer with one syllable for every question. those tend to drag for a while.
Yeah.
Actually, Alvaro, the story we were looking for was about being on location or the application of your job.
I mean, application.
He'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
Well, he can't talk about his current job. I know. I got. Neither can I.
So, previous jobs, Apple, like I saw a lot of the stuff going around. that I kind of worked on a little bit here and there, but I guess also satellites are up in space from my previous job, but nothing, didn't travel much on site. We did have some on-site like surprises, I guess, when we were demoing a board and my boss was there and his boss was there and his boss was there, and then I blew up the board in front of all of them, just because power supply user interface was unexpectedly bad. And
that always
I
happens.
think you could spin that story a lot differently, and it would be awesome.
Well, so I had, it was a kilowatt power supply, so it's a big one. And the circuit is basically, it had a safety that below, I think, like 17 volts, it would be off. And then after 17, it'd turn on. And after 30 or something, imagine it would turn itself off. And we're trying to test the high end to make sure it still turns off. And people are gathered around, and I walk around and I step on a cable and I hear like kind of I hear sounds.
I'm trying to be a snake.
That's weird. Well, I told them like, hey, did you see that? I stepped on the cable and it made these sounds. So I stepped on it just to be sure. And then, and then we started smelling plastic burning. And this is the power line.
And then you stepped on it again and just ground your heel into it.
Well, no, we unplugged it immediately, and it turns out whoever spliced it had basically shorted when I stepped on it. But anyway, we fixed it, and then I'm trying to do the demo, and the power supply had just one knob, and you could change the current or voltage. And so I set the voltage, I start raising it, and once it gets to 17 volts, it stops going up. And I keep turning the knob, and it just stays at
17 amps,
volts.
isn't it?
Oh, no.
No, it was volts.
No, it's current limiting.
Yeah, it's current limiting. And so I was like, oh, current limit. So I just hit the current button, I raise it a little bit, and then the board goes pop. And then there was a few parts kind of flew off. But yeah, so the user interface of the power supply displayed the actual voltage, not the setting by default. And you had to hold the button down to see what the setting was, which was my mistake. And I kind of got to do that in front of everyone.
You earned your Sparky stripes that day.
No, after a couple days later, the name tag on my desk said "Oops" instead of Alvaro, and it kind of became my nickname after that.
Only I'd introduced you that way.
Yeah, no, I had oops@apple.com was my email and everything. It was, yeah.
Excellent.
There's a few of those.
Okay, so now I should move to the next question, or should we go back to worst interview stories? Because Svec didn't pipe up on that one.
No, I was just thinking about having to test with actual human hearts and kidneys, but nobody wants to hear about that.
Oh.
Yes, we do.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, it's all right.
I want to hear about that.
I don't want to
This is
think about it
related to
anymore.
embedded systems,
I don't
right?
want to
This
hear
isn't
this.
something else.
No, I had to
Are we
test.
taking a vote, or
I had to test my embedded system on bits.
Is this biology?
Yeah, well, no, I mean it was electronics jammed into
Is this a
biology.
heart rate monitor?
We could just move on.
Next topic.
Next topic.
I'm squeamish.
Oh, really?
Tell us about that. Oh, no, just kidding.
No.
Two of the best things about working on embedded systems for me have been seeing my products on Target's shelves, because there's just something magical about pointing to it and saying, I made that. Even if you only wrote like the firmware and one small section of it, it's still the ownership feeling, and seeing it where people will buy it was just really awesome. And the other thing was one of these on-site things where I was working on race cars, and I was in the pit right before a major NASCAR event, and I was in the car, and all these other cars are going around really fast, and because they're warming up, and I'm doing stuff in the car, and people are clearly waiting for me to get out of the way. And there was just this life of knowing that my software was going to go get to play, and then I was going to get to watch it. And I love those two things. I like seeing my stuff in action, I guess, is what that boils down to. Is there anything that you really like about embedded systems? We whine about our jobs constantly. We hate our tools, or the learning, the imposter
Yes.
syndrome. There's so many things we hate. But what do you like about embedded systems?
When they work.
Well, yes, when they work.
Oh, no. There's one, a lot of my work has been either consumer electronics or that kind of stuff, which, yeah, it's nice. But one of my internships was at a research institute in Switzerland with a proton therapy device, which is a cancer treatment thing. And that was super cool to, get to work on something that's literally going to save someone's life. And I worked on a safety system so it wouldn't crush people, and so the proton beam wouldn't be on when they open the door. But now that I think about it, I do have a weird job story from that one too. I had this is a 300-ton gantry. So it's electromagnets to spin around to aim the proton beam at the person.
Yes, oops, tell us more.
No squeamishness required. But I had to do a software simulator of the security system because the contractor that was going to do it wasn't ready. So my boss was working on the control system for this thing, and I had to have a kind of a safety system behind it. And it required these networked relays. So it was just an Ethernet and then 2 relays. So my boss was out that day, and I had to get this working. I got the relay, plugged it into network, but I didn't know the IP address. So I don't speak German. Everyone else was kind of out. So I decided, let me just do a port scan of the entire network until I find this device because it's listening on some port. So I started it, and I found a bunch of webcams and no device. I think an hour later, a guy on the phone walks into the room and just says, I found him. Or, I found it. And so the guy goes, I found it. And then he hands me the phone. And the guy's like, we're seeing a ping flood coming out from your computer. So apparently all their intrusion detection systems were just going nuts. And they were looking around the building.
The hack is coming
computer.
from inside the building.
Well, I forgot to turn off. I forgot to turn off pinging, so I was trying to ping every device before it.
Sure.
And but apparently, this is a computer they had borrowed, so they looked everywhere else, and then they finally got in touch with the person who owned it, and they're like, "Oh, so and so's intern is using it," and then they found it. But then I just told the guy, "No, I'm just trying to find this. I don't know the IP address." He's like, "Oh, what's the MAC address?" I told him, he gave me the IP address, and it was done. But I was freaking out a little bit.
And from then on, they called you "oops" in Swiss German.
How do you say oops in German?
Oopsa.
Oops. But yeah, and yeah, this was at the particle physics kind of thing, where dosimeter, that was always fun. But yeah, that's my story. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Why do you like embedded systems? Or something on that order was the last story cue.
Oh, right. Yeah, I keep not answering the question. I I like being able to...
It's a bad interview technique.
Well, no, it worked
depends.
out. I mean, I think his answer was he likes not killing people with giant electromagnets.
If you look at TV, it works great. But, sorry. No, I like firmware because it lets me... It's kind of a good medium between, like a in-between point of instant gratification and getting to like move things. So it's not as fast as regular software, but I get to do things in the physical world. But traditionally, like mechanical or just pure double E stuff sometimes takes a long time to get stuff working. With firmware, you can get going relatively quickly and see kind of the results of your work. And that's always fun.
Cool. Next.
I'll go. So I've worked at iRobot for about 3 years now, and this is my first job in commercial electronics, or consumer electronics, where people can actually purchase, like real regular humans can actually purchase the thing that I work on. And so, like Alicia said, like it's great to actually see it on Amazon and see it on Target, and see it at Target or see it at random stores, and people can buy it. I went to a talk recently with Fred Brooks, the Mythical Man Month guy, and we went around the table introducing ourselves, and I said, I work for iRobot, and I work on the Roomba, and he says, I have one, and I was like, oh, cool, and I said, how do you like it? And he said, I love it, it's great. And so I was like, that's fantastic. Fred Brooks has my product. He thinks it's great. So that was just a random little shot in the arm. The other thing I like about it is that I have a background in EE, and I worked on hardware and software. And working on embedded the fact that it's hardware and software, the fact that it's you get to go as low level as the chip, and maybe even lower some of the stuff that some of the physics stuff that the chip is connected to, all the way up to the software, as basically as high in the software stack as you want to go. That I kind of understand all of that, and that I get to play in all of that every day. I just love the depth and breadth of the stuff that we get to work on.
I totally agree with that. There's so many things you get to see, and working with little tiny companies, sometimes I get to see all the business stuff too. But the math and the science and the engineering and the software, it's just kind of neat to be able to try all of them.
Yep.
Elizabeth, do you have an answer?
I think I really like the degree of complexity. It's not too complex, and it's not too simple for my personal enjoyment. I like the interaction of lots of different threads and interrupts, and trying to get my head around, if this happens and then that happens, but not this, what's going to go wrong? So the problem solving is really, really fun.
Great puzzles. Chris?
Which Chris? Oh,
You?
he already answered.
Yes, and I keep calling him Svec, which isn't totally fair.
You just keep changing it around. It's totally confusing.
It's totally confusing.
What am I answering?
Whatever
Good
you
question.
want, really.
I fell asleep. No.
Oh.
Kidding.
I'll go.
What do you like about embedded systems?
No, it echoes what everybody said. But, the first time I had a real embedded systems job instead of working on routers, which are embedded systems, but nobody cares. It was a stupid product. I think I've talked about this before, but it had lasers and it had motors and it had optics that you had to move from the software, and it had moving parts and cryptography and just all this. It was a medical device, but it had all these bits. And so it was so great to be able to learn about all these pieces of a system and be able to understand a whole complicated system, at least at some level, rather than just working on a little corner of some really, so esoteric or large scale computer. That was really cool. And I learned a lot doing that. And that's kind of what I like about the whole embedded systems field, is you get to make things happen, or you get to sense things in the real world instead of just taking input from a user and going out to a database and, doing queries like that and that sort of thing. And yeah, so that's probably the one thing that I really like the most that got me into it. There's things I don't like.
Well, yes, but this is our 200th
and I like
it's all puffy.
and the weird thing is I kind of like, it takes me back to when I was first learning to use computers on Apple IIs and things, because the kind of hardware we're using doesn't have, it's got more resources than an Apple II, but maybe not, it's not so far removed from that. It's still really resource constrained. And so, like Elizabeth said, the problem solving of fitting things together and making it all work when you've only got 5 Lego pieces instead of the whole box.
Yeah, there's something about having to work with one arm tied behind your back that's really appealing. And that's probably psychologically questionable.
Well, you also get to save the day a lot of times when it's like, oh, there's a hardware bug. Oh, but we can fix it in firmware, which sucks for the firmware engineer. But it is cool where you save the product because, you can. But when people just assume like, oh, we don't have to worry about this because the firmware will save it, that's not as fun.
I'd just like to point out that one arm tied behind your back is a horrific pun in this context.
Oh, no.
That's terrible. I would never have thought of that.
Andrei.
You people are silly.
Oh.
No, it's very much the same thing. The nice thing about embedded systems is you are working at the interface of hardware and software. And, you're working on a team where that line moves around. So if something it's hard to do in hardware, the hardware guy can just say, can we move this over 2 pins? Because then it'll make my job a whole lot easier. And it's like, yeah, we can do that. We can. And with the software, it's like, if you gave me this kind of a circuit in here, that would make the software tons easier. And, your hardware guy, it's a great trade-off. But I think the thing that I like best is actually debugging, because it's as you say, it's a lot like solving puzzles. I mean, the circuits and the code are sitting there and they're giving you data about what's going on, but you've got to spot the patterns, figure out what the thing is doing, and then figure out how to tame this damn thing because it's never been done before. And another thing I really like, right when I started, let's see, it would be just before year 2000, I was working at this medical startup, and we were working on this device that zapped people's legs to make them walk again. And a lot of people
Sorry. You're going to have to explain that just a little bit more. Just one more sentence.
Okay.
Because we all are all picturing things that don't quite work.
Right now, I'm picturing Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm picturing Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting there. Okay, so this is people that have had strokes, and they end up with a condition called drop foot. So they cannot lift up their foot anymore when they walk. So they sort of drag their foot along the ground. So what we were doing was putting electrodes on their shin, and at the appropriate time, we would zap the muscle and it would make their foot involuntarily lift. So yes, Frankenstein. So a whole bunch of people that have, they are now handicapped. We were helping them walk and make their life a little bit more normal. So of course, this company had to die, and it did. And we all got laid off, and the thing floundered.
This question was about liking embedded systems, and suddenly we're down to companies that die. I'm not really sure.
That's episode 300 is the complaints episode.
You want me to bring this around?
No, it's...
You want me to bring this around now? Okay. So one of my friends has got MS, and as it turns out, somebody bought the IP for our product and took it to market. And my friend, who I build kites with, has one of these devices and uses it on a daily basis. And I said, I helped build that. This is really cool. This is actually helping not some abstract person. This is helping one of my own friends. It is so cool to see that.
Yes. All right. Yes. I totally agree with that.
This is why I'm so against test-driven development, by the way, because according to the test-driven development people, you never have to debug if you write the code the right way with test-driven development. And debugging is kind of the fun part. So why would you want to do that?
Well, you can always debug somebody else's code.
Yeah, they should be using test-driven development too.
Oh, no.
Well, since you're at the interface of hardware and software, there's all sorts of things that they're blowing up your code because the hardware is wrong. And you get to find that stuff.
They should be using Agile and test-driven development too.
Oh, so we have to stand up to fix it.
Where's Chris Gammell?
Where is our token hardware engineer?
Oh, no, but he's been talking about doing kind of a, not Agile, but for hardware, the quick iterative thing.
Uh-huh.
I was just going to troll.
So that reminds me of one of my favorite stories that I'd completely forgotten about. The same company that was working in the pulp and paper industry was also hired by Eli Lilly to come up with a system based on the continuous process control systems that Eli Lilly used when they were developing the first human insulin, because that is also a batch process. So I was involved in the team that did the port from the tiny little x86 processors to the VAX VMS processors so that the Eli Lilly people could write their control strategies on top of our system. And, that was cool. It was nice to have it be more broadly used. And then maybe 5 years later, my daughter was diagnosed with diabetes and started using Eli Lilly insulin. And that was the first time that I had that experience of somebody I cared about benefiting from something I had done. That was super cool.
Yes. And yes, exactly. I was going to go back to Andrei's point of we end up working in teams, which as a software engineer, I worked in a team, but we were all kind of, we were specialties, but we were interchangeable and we didn't work together. And now, I mean, the electrical engineer that I work with is so important. And the apps person I work with is so important. And I don't always get to work with very many other firmware engineers. But I like being that part of a team. I didn't expect that. After N years of school where I hated all team projects, now I kind of dig them.
Yeah.
I think there's a nice in-between point. Yeah.
It's a little bit different. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to change the way your PC works. So if you're doing a web app with an SQL backend, the platform is pretty much defined. With us, I mean, we've taken a look at certain aspects of projects and said, this should be done in analog. And it's not, we're going to make it 5 times faster. It's working in analog. As soon as the signal changes, the output changes. You're not, the computer just stands there and looks at the thing. You can't do that on a PC.
Yes, shifting our reality. Alvaro, were you going to say something?
I was just agreeing.
All right, we can all agree.
That's just wrong.
I came across one of my Ethernet crossover cables, a little tiny 1-inch thing. And in around year 2000, even up to 2005, this was one of my tools. And I lent it out with great reluctance. And I demanded it back promptly because it was my tool. Sometimes I do get attached to tools. I even with the digital discovery and the oscilloscope we have, or the analog discovery and the scope we have, I still have some affection for my little digital Cixin. And there's this idea that we do get integrated with our tools. And I don't think anybody's going to choose IAR as their favorite tool, but I wonder, what tools do you like best, and what did you have to go through to acquire it? Did you just buy it? Did your company buy it? Did you obsess over it for 6 months and finally plunk down your own cash? Alvaro, I know you have some pretty spectacular tools, so I'm going to ask you to go first.
I do? Oh.
Since I've borrowed them, I'm going to say that.
Oh, that one. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I have a mix of tools. My very first, I got a multimeter early on, right? That was great. But when I first started doing embedded, one of the first things I got was my Cixin logic in 2008 or 9, I guess. And it was super helpful for a lot of the stuff I was doing. And I've upgraded to the later one. And I'd still recommend it highly. Analog Discovery 2 has also been kind of a more recent addition to my toolbox, but I've used it a lot. Just lots of different things. More specific tools, like you mentioned you borrowed, I have a Beagle USB 480, which is a USB protocol analyzer. And I first used one of those at work, and it's a lifesaver for when you're doing firmware development. So they had some sort of like 25% off, and it's still ridiculously expensive, but I decided to get it just because whenever I do need it, it's worth it easily. What else do I have? Power supplies, oscilloscopes.
No, this is important tools that actually are important to you, not just cool tools, but ones
important to me
that you care about more than is probably sensible.
Well, I made I've made tools I made out of necessity, and I value those and much more because I had to make them, right? So in my first internship, actually in college, I did a lot of serial kind of communication and stuff, and I would crimp my own cables and do kind of vampire taps so I could sniff serial ports with another computer, and I was known for having all combinations of sizes, lengths, 2-tap, 3-tap cables, and it was just super, super helpful. Apparently, after I left, they made a drawer with my name on it, and people years after recognized me and said, "You're Alvaro from the drawer. Like, you're the person who made all those cables." So that was fun. But right now I have my Silta. I think I talked a little bit about it, but it's just kind of a generic USB to all sorts of protocols like I2C, SPI, and I just have a little Python interface. And I've used that so much in the past couple of years, or a year and a half, I guess, for embedded systems for prototyping. And that's probably one of my most valuable ones, even though it's just a development board with my firmware.
Alvaro's got all these neat tools, and I feel like he's had it too easy. Because one of the reasons I love my Cellier is having set up an old style logic analyzer, 1990 something. Elizabeth, I suspect you care about some tools more than others because you know exactly what it's like to live with scary, scary tools.
Well, so I'm very much on the software side of firmware.
Okay.
So I don't really have hardware tools. I mean, I have a set of connectors and cables and switches from old jobs that I keep carefully boxed away. And I'm very possessive of those. My favorite tools, though, would be software tools and things that I decided I liked enough to pay for myself. And Edit Plus and Beyond Compare are the two that come to mind. So where the license isn't expensive, but it was, more than $5. So I had to think about whether I liked it enough to own it, even if it wasn't what my company was providing, and decided I absolutely did.
Okay, who on this show has a Beyond Compare license?
Me, and I've got that's one of my tools, which is absolute favorite. I have a story about that as well, so I echo that definitely.
I do too. So definitely almost half. Chris, do you have one?
I just use the free version whenever I need it.
Yeah, that's what I've used.
Svec, why don't you go next?
Sure. So I will start with Beyond Compare. So Beyond Compare is one of the first software tools I ever bought, like with my own money. The company probably would have paid for it, but I thought I'm going to use this. Like I instantly liked it. I was at a company that used primarily Windows for development environment, and it was native Windows back then. Then I moved to a company that was mostly Mac development. It was embedded firmware, but the OSs we all used for our developer machines were Macs. And so Beyond Compare did not have anything for the Mac at that point. But there's this thing called Crossover, where it's a wine. It's like a for pay wine Windows emulation system. I think the company's called Code Weavers. I think the product is called Crossover. Anyway, so you can run a lot of Windows programs on a Mac or on Linux using this thing. And I actually wanted to use Beyond Compare so much that I signed up to be like an advocate, meaning I did a ton of debugging and basically pestered this Beyond, made sure that the company that did Crossover, that did this Windows emulation, had everything they need to make Beyond Compare work on my Mac. So I spent a lot of free time and mental energy to make sure I could use this tool on Mac. And finally, a few years ago, Beyond Compare works natively on Mac and Linux and Windows now, so I can use it everywhere at once. But I paid for that tool once a long time ago. They should definitely consider an annual something. Maybe I should buy a second copy just because I like it that much. But that tool is just a phenomenal diff tool that sort of does everything I assume it should do out of the box really well. Hardware-wise, Salier, I like my Salier. I have used old school logic analyzers, giant HP things that require all kinds of bizarre hardware and software to set up. They're like the size of, I don't know, a 30-inch monitor. I've used a few of those. Just nuts, especially considering the Salier is like whatever. You can fit it in your pocket easily. So those are good. J-Link, Sega J-Link, specifically the J-Link Pro that has Ethernet and USB connections. So this is a tool that talks either JTAG or SWD, single wire debug to chips. So I absolutely love my J-Link. I know people love OpenOCD. I know people love ST-Links. I know people love whatever.
OpenOCD?
Yeah, can I have a list? Because I need to talk to them.
Walk away, walk away, walk away.
I know people that actively choose OpenOCD over Sega. How about that?
I use it.
Now that there's a Black Magic, I don't know why people would not use
I
it.
haven't got mine yet.
It's on Linux only. So, I
Black
mean...
Magic?
Yeah.
No,
No?
no,
It
no.
works on everything.
Man, if only they'd ship their Kickstarter.
Everything?
I already got my Kickstarter.
Does it work
back.
on BIOS?
Oh,
Next step?
Walk away, walk away.
Okay. So, well, we're all
Sorry.
looking... some of us are looking forward to Black Magics, but that doesn't count. J-Link Pro.
See, you're all proving my point, because this whole time while you were debating this thing that you may or may not have that may or may work on your operating system, the Sega J-Link Pro has been working for years and years and years, and it just keeps working, and they keep fixing bugs, and they keep adding chips.
And it's got an Ethernet port, so if he opens a port to the internet, I could log into his thing and bug it.
That's absolutely right.
I mean, debug it.
Yeah, but that one's not cheap. I mean, that's a pretty expensive
No, that is not cheap. I have
That's
not
over
purchased that
$1,000.
with my. Yeah, that is. I think it's like $1,200 or something like that. However, it's definitely well worth the money if I were an independent contractor.
yeah, I mean, your time is worth more than that over
Yep.
years, easily.
We should have somebody from Sega on. Maybe they'd give us coupons.
Yes.
Giveaways. All right. Who's next? Were you done, Svec?
I am, yes.
Okay. Andrei?
I have not used your diff program. I found out about it last week on the embedded.fm podcast. But my tool, let's see, my HP16C calculator. It works as a regular calculator, but it also does binary, octal, hex, decimal, plus all the stuff you need for embedded systems, signed and unsigned calculations, various word sizes, shifts, masking, ORs, exclusive ORs, and all sorts of stuff like that. And this is a calculator from the early 80s that somebody at Dow Chemical had one when I worked there. And it was just the greatest thing for programming. And it was hugely expensive. But one time, Dorothy and I were going down to Mexico, and we had a bit of a layover in Los Angeles. So we had enough time that we could hop into a sketchy cab and drive past all the strip clubs and gun ranges and liquor stores to this place that actually had one. And I've been using it ever since. So how does this help everybody else? They aren't made anymore, but you can get an emulator program for PCs and Macs that actually used the original firmware that HP released. And there's also a company in Switzerland called Swiss Micros that has re-implemented the 16 plus a bunch of other HP calculators, and you can actually buy them.
That is fun.
We will have links in the show notes.
Looks like for about $150 you can get one on eBay. HP16C.
Yeah, that's it. It's well worth it.
Computer Scientist Calculator. Is that what it was called? The Computer Scientist Calculator?
I don't know. Probably. Other than that, on a daily basis...
You didn't mention RPN.
Oh, yes, it's a reverse Polish notation calculator. This thing, it's awesome.
That was implied with awesome.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure.
It has no... For the uninitiated, this thing does not have an equals button. So if you own one of these, somebody will try and borrow it, and then they'll return it in about 14 seconds saying, I don't get it.
I had the opposite experience. I forgot my HP calculator at an exam, grad school, and they had some Casios lying around, so I had to use one of those. I couldn't do anything.
Not even TI.
It was infix, and I can't think that way anymore.
No.
So it'll break you if you use one of these long enough.
Oh, yeah.
Then you'll be a fourth programmer.
Right.
Yeah. Next to my 16, I've got a 41 CV, and my son is actually using my HP 67 while he's at university, and it's actually older than the HP calculator that they have in their computing museum at the university. So what else? Indispensable tools. My iPod Photo 60 that pipes me tunes daily to get rid of the daily chit-chat in the office. On the expensive side, I use a Tektronix mixed signal oscilloscope. I would not suggest that people buy these for a hobby because they're bloody expensive, but as a professional tool, oh my God, these things are awesome.
Yes.
But for a hobby, the Embedded.fm podcast is having a giveaway where you can win a Digilant pocket oscilloscope. So send in your favorite number, and there's...
It's just a digital one, no?
Oh, yeah.
I think it does analog.
We're keeping the analog one. They send us 3, and so we're giving away the 2 digital ones. But they are 100 megahertz logic analyzers, and they still do the power out and being able to pattern generate. So it's really cool.
Still super useful.
We have those, we've also got a Tektronix 8000 series scope that has the arbitrary waveform generator, but it doesn't even have a power supply built in. So that Digilant is even more awesome.
Yes.
And remember, we're also giving one away to students.
This is true. A number between
Whose show is this?
1 and 997.
Yours, get on it.
And you should do that very soon because the contest ends May 18th. Also, T-shirts end May 18th. Maybe one of those
When is the show going up?
This show?
This show?
August.
Before May, I think.
Before May? Can't go before May.
2018.
Too hard.
It should go out next Wednesday, whatever that is.
Oh, so they'll have a day. Okay.
Yeah, you won't have much time to order your shirts.
If you're listening to
do
this,
it. But you may have
pick
2
a
days
number.
to enter the contest. And there's also a hat contest, but that's all on the blog. Has to do with March Madness.
I didn't know about that.
And I'd also like to pass along that we get absolutely nothing from this shill for Cellier and all the Tektronix and HPs.
No, but I mean, people want to know what tools you use. So, yeah.
That is true.
And
I want to see how much would IAR sponsor? How much would they pay to sponsor this? That's what I want to know.
5 licenses, 2 licenses, half a license.
I don't want their blood money.
My most awesome tool, I just about forgot. Apple MacBook Pro.
Damn it, Andrei.
Sorry. You can cut that out and put it in later.
No, it's fine.
why are
Because
you...
that was on my list.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I should call on you sooner. Or
No,
you should
it's
just
fine.
pipe up.
No, it's fine. You have an order.
I don't really.
Keep things running. Keep it going.
The order
You're
is
next.
Chris last, right?
Yeah, I'm last. Who's next?
You.
Oh, is everybody gone?
Yes.
Well,
Sorry, and with my explanation is Chris White.
I have no tools I care about.
Take away his computer.
No, I used to like my HP 48 calculator. That was something I always carried around, but it was.
What about that thing your computer's on?
that? That's a stand.
It's a pretty awesome thing.
It's a pretty awesome stand. I have a computer stand that somebody handmade that allows it to be placed in any orientation, and I can use it to stand up or sit down or put it over things. So like if I'm playing drums, I can put it over by my drum set and have it put the computer so that I can access it. But yeah.
And it weighs about 10, 15 pounds.
Yeah,
I've
it's all
carried
wood,
it and used
and
it
it's
outside
got
a few
like
times.
3 or 4 joints that can be rotated and adjusted. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I don't remember what it's called, but we can put it in the show notes. Mover. Yeah. I don't know if they still make them, They might.
Speaking of tools,
Yeah.
do you guys have a good USB hub that works?
I use the Amazon
Basics.
brand, Amazon Basics, and I think it's a 10-port powered USB hub. I am so in favor of powered USB hubs now.
But you don't have any
huge.
glitches?
I haven't had a lot of problems, and when I borrowed your USB tool, the hub was never the problem. Zero
Maybe
packets.
it's just Ubuntu.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Well, I find that's one thing with embedded systems is you're constantly overpowering the USB for some odd reason because we tend to short things, which makes the USB hubs go offline as well as the USB ports in my MacBook Pro.
Ooh.
But it can only be fixed by rebooting unless somebody has a trick to get these things back online.
What are you doing?
What? Wait, no, I don't think we should debug his computer. But I want to go back to the fact that I was asking about tools. You demanded
Well, I was going
to be called upon, and then you said, "No, I don't have anything."
Well, you took
Is that really what happened?
Everybody took all of mine, and Andrei took the Mac, and so yeah.
We can have similar choices. It's cool.
You can chop that out and
give
put
a
yours
plus
in.
one.
What do you like about the MacBook Pro?
It works, and it never broke.
Do this. I'm gonna do this because we're just kind of dogpiling on other Chris right now. But
Other Chris.
Other Chris
Who edits this program and has complete control over everything that comes out.
That's fine. So I use a Pluggable is the name of the company. They have a nice 10-port USB 2.0 USB 2.0 hub, and I've used it at two different companies now. And the Pluggable 10-port hub has been pretty darn reliable for me. I even sent 15 volts through it once, and
Which way?
It torched the robot that I was working on, but the USB hub after a reset has been fine.
Wow.
So
I like the USB 3 hubs because they have more power. They do. You can source more power.
Okay.
So Chris, what do you like about your MacBook Pro?
I like that it's indestructible and has lasted for years and has never had a problem.
I agree.
Wait a minute. You've been talking about giving it back to the Apple Store.
Oh, it's got a cosmetic issue, but it doesn't really matter. It still works fine.
Too much blush or eyeshadow or something, or what's the issue?
It's the wrong color of rose gold.
I'll just cut that out.
This show is only going to be about 10 seconds long.
And it's all going to be me.
I've got a show title. I've got a show title for you then. Unhappy Other Chris.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I used to get Dell laptops all the time, and they would last about 18 months, and then the chassis would crack, and then the keyboards would fail, and then it would blow the motherboard. And I don't remember what got me onto Macs, but eventually I got a MacBook Pro because it had an aluminum chassis, and it finally blew a capacitor after 8 years. And I replaced the capacitor, and it's a happy fellow right now, and it just keeps on working.
Yeah.
That has been a cheap computer.
Yeah, it's really sad Apple doesn't make these anymore.
It really is. I would have gotten one.
It's too bad they don't make computers.
Yeah. Okay, so moving along, right?
Yes,
moving
please.
along.
Right.
Agreed.
We run a podcast. I don't know if any of you have heard that. And this is episode 200. You've all been on the show at some other point, and many of you listen to the show. I wondered if you would like to say something about Embedded, the podcast, what your show is, what show you were on in the past, or what show you particularly liked, or somebody you introduced me to that was on the show and you were happy. Since all of those things have happened, I think for all of you, tell me how much you like me.
No.
No?
We're fishing for compliments?
No, I'm fishing. Well, this is actually a lead into, we're going to have the embedded survey. And one of the questions on the embedded survey is do you have a favorite episode? And I figured maybe if I asked for their favorite episodes,
that's fine.
That would help people remember.
Yeah, we're just live answering the survey.
That was tempting. That was on my list to do next, but I think we're going to run out of time. Okay.
Chris can chop it out.
Favorite episode or memorable episode or something you like?
I love interviews, like with people, like, you're finding out more about products, like was it the Black Magic or different development techniques, all that stuff. I found a lot of cool stuff that I later started using just from hearing people on the show, which is always fun. I mean, the primary reason for me to listen is to learn, and still going.
Okay, so that's good, but we want specifics. I want names. Not necessarily show names, but maybe guest names.
Jack Gansel.
Yeah.
It's been 999 episodes. Do you have a list?
Yes.
I hopefully will have a list by the time the show goes live so that it's in the survey. But you I expect to, I don't know, you can say your own show. And Patrick was on.
Yep.
And you've had lots of friends on the show. You have suggested many guests.
I don't think attacking the interviewee is the right approach.
All right. Let's just move on.
Well, I was going to say Natalie, who was on, has been on the news a lot recently, which is really cool.
Natalie did the Tamagotchi hack.
Natalie Savanovich.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she also found a bug in the Windows Defender code that you just...
That was Natalie?
That was Natalie.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. No, she's super cool.
Okay. Elizabeth, do you have a show you want to suggest? And you can use your own.
How many of the Sidenblads have you had on?
2. 2 of 3, I think. Kathy and her husband, which Paul.
But not Anne yet.
No.
So what I like about the Paul episode, which I think I only listened to part of because I'm completely ADHD and I can't sit still that long, is the report that Paul went home and wasn't able to actually speak again until the next day because he had used up all his speak.
Yes. We talked to Paul about his career at NVIDIA and the fact that even though he's 70, he's still having a good time being an engineer. Why would you retire? It was pretty cool. Andrei, do you have an episode?
I have a few, of course, they're at home that I just keep in iTunes all the time, but the one that does stick in my mind is the Jack Gansel one, because he just passes on such great information all the time. So everybody should go listen to that one. Going back and listening to mine, yeah, thanks for replaying that. Those are very shocking. What I like about the Embedded podcast, I don't know why you let me hang around with you guys, but I really do appreciate it. Coming down to California was a hoot. I stayed with Chris and Alicia, and they are terrific people. Got chauffeured around in a car that is very quiet. They live by a dreamy beach. Now I'm kind of isolated up here. Like there isn't a great, huge community that we can just, go to a arbitrary cafe in Los Gatos and meet people that are in the same industry. So just the camaraderie, the group, being able to bounce ideas off of you. I'm just learning so much.
Cool.
And I hope I'm giving back something.
You do. And your blog is awesome. I mean, it's a lot of work, and it shows how much work you put into it.
Okay. I'll take it.
Svec, do you have any shows you like?
I do. Jack Gansel is a consummate professional, a nice guy. If you can ever take his class, any of his classes, he's just phenomenal. Like it's hard to say what a professional he is, but like in all the good ways, the man is a professional. And he's just a really nice guy to boot. So I actually re-listened to his podcast, I don't know, every 5-6 months just to kind of get my head back in that sort of what it is to be a long-term professional in this field. Just to kind of hear that. Dennis Jackson was on, and his whole thing, which stuck with me, is, don't be clever. And I already kind of believed that, but like he had that little short snippet, don't be clever is just such a good mantra. So I liked his episode too. It was practical, and I mean he's someone else who's been doing this a while, doing a bunch of different companies, and so his show was great. The most recent show that I think has been fantastic is I actually had to bring it up because I couldn't remember the name of the episode or the guy, but it's Self-Driving Arm. That's episode 187. Patrick Pilarski.
Yeah, Andrei actually set us up with that. So
yeah. First of all, he was so enthusiastic. It was just you could tell the guy was having fun on the show. You were having fun interviewing him, Chris and Alicia, and it was a great show. And the content was so like broad and deep, right? Because I mean it was smart prosthetic limbs, right? So it was AI, it was robotics, it was prosthetics, it was helping people with cool, interesting tech topics, and he was a very good person to talk about it. He's just really, really well spoken with it. So, yeah, those 3 episodes I think have been just really good episodes that I re-listen to from time to time.
Oh, Patrick is one of my favorites, just because it was such a mind-blowing topic, and the information per second was very high. It was Alan Yates is one of my favorite too, because he just went through an amazing amount of technical information, and it all made sense as he was talking. And afterwards I was like, you can't get from A to B and have it make sense in this amount of time and no whiteboard. But both Alan and Patrick did a great job just making me feel like I understood what they were saying. Chris, do you have any favorite episodes?
It's really hard to answer that question for me. Many of the ones I have enjoyed recording the most have already been mentioned. So Patrick Pilarski's and Jack Gansel's, of course. I don't know. I mean, that's a really hard question because a lot of them that I thought were really great, maybe other people don't, and ones that I was kind of, I'm not sure if this is any good, people tend to like, so I don't try to judge too much.
You're not probably not gonna say you like your own, but I've found really helpful all the consulting tips ones and stuff, or like the taxes. Like, as strange as that sound, it was super helpful, and I actually got my housemates now with your tax lady as well.
I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes we do go off book. I mean, the show's called Embedded, and what are we doing? Giving advice about?
Hey, you want a guest every week? We're gonna have some off-topic stuff. Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even though it's not embedded, I still found it very entertaining and helpful. I mean, I want to do that at some point full time. So it's good to learn all these things.
You want to do taxes full time?
Yeah,
that's sick.
Don't you?
That's sick.
I'm going to be a QuickBooks engineer.
The flip answer, of course, is the ones that are easy to edit.
The ones, yeah. No.
Which means that this will be my least favorite episode.
I've been thinking about what a nightmare this is going to be to edit.
This is a lot like the time when I said, "Hey, Chris, I want to interview the cat," and he was like, "Go get some recordings," and I did, and then he spent forever making that sound good, and this time I was like, "Oh, let's have a couple extra people on the show," and I think maybe Chris was too busy to say, "No, that's a terrible idea," and so now we have, a whole party here.
I do want to say that I actually, no sarcasm, I actually enjoyed the cat episode because it was so ridiculous. It overflowed the I'm assuming probably unsigned character number for ridiculousness, and so it overflowed stupidity up into just pure ridiculousness, and it was great. I enjoyed it.
I mean, it was 20 minutes long. If it had been 5 minutes long, it would have been But there's something that happened after about minute 12 that made it awesome.
No, it's the Dave Letterman theory of comedy. This is my theory. So Dave Letterman, so his whole thing is like things get funnier the more you say them, especially if they weren't that funny in the first place. And so if you just keep repeating it and just keep repeating, and you're not giving up on the joke, That's what makes it funny.
Yes.
On the other hand, the episode with the Ballisticats was actually very good.
Thank
you, Chris.
One of the musical episodes when Chris was in a band, and we would occasionally put up music if we wanted an off week. We haven't done that in a long time because you haven't had new band recordings.
That's because the stuff we're working on is too complicated for either of us to play.
I've designed embedded systems like that. It's much too complicated to implement.
We've been working on one song for about 4 months now. I have 2 songs. 2 songs for 4 months.
We're going to have to hear it then.
Someday.
Oh, no.
Right. We were warned there might be cowbell. I feel that should signify something, like we've won or something.
It's the last 30 seconds.
For the winner of the contest.
We have so many contests right now. Why did I make them last so long? Such foolishness. All right. I had one more question about what do you want to learn next, or what field or skills do you think will be useful in your career in the next 5 years? Do you want to do that really quickly and just tell me one of those two? I understand it's not always the same. What do you want to learn, and what do you think will be useful in your career in the next 5 years? But either one. Elizabeth, do you have answers for that?
Yeah, those are 2 totally different questions. What I want to learn is probably something about doing things in the garden that I've never been brave enough to try. So like grafting fruit trees. I would love to learn how to graft fruit trees. What will be useful in my career? I've never had any vision on that. Now, one of the things that our friend Kathy Sidenplatt says is, what do you mean 5-year plan? I just did the next thing that was in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's still where I'm at. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I've never known what was going to happen next year. And anytime anybody has asked me, what's your 5-year plan? It's like, I might have a 6-month plan. I have no idea what'll be useful over the next 5 years. I think I'll probably still be working for the next 5 years, but what I should be learning in order to do better, I have no idea.
All right. Does somebody have an answer?
Sure.
Go ahead.
If things I want to learn, I'm doing more kind of lower level stuff, so more board layout, more circuit design kind of thing to understand. I basically want to be more self-sufficient. At work, I'm more dependent on the hardware engineers for some of the design, and I do have the double E background, but I haven't been exercising it. So I'm making lots of little boards at home to practice soldering, to practice debugging hardware and stuff. And I'm using it as an excuse to make, for the cheese cave or that kind of stuff. But yeah, more hardware. It's just, I guess it's more useful. And there's fewer people with hardware, firmware, like good firmware and hardware background than firmware and higher level software. I feel there's more people that can do that. So
cool. Andrei?
Recently, I've been working with the ESP8266, putting together a web server on my embedded little processor and learning way, way more web server than I really wanted to. But I can see it being really useful. On the other hand, I think what I'm going to be learning, whether I like it or not, is BLE.
I'm sorry.
Freaking BLE.
Exactly. Every customer that we have walking through the door wants BLE, and it's okay. All right. That's what I'm going to be on.
Chris?
I think I should probably finally learn how pointers work. Wait.
Just switch to Rust.
I said the quiet part out loud, didn't I? I don't know. I'm always kind of exploring little things here and there, but I don't know if anything will ever be useful to my career. So, I mean, we spent some time playing around with 3D graphics, on our own time, and I've done some electronics that I've been slowly learning. I think it all depends on what the next bit of work is. And for a long time, it's always been kind of C on embedded systems. And yes, maybe learning, about BLE, but that doesn't seem like something that new to me. It seems like another isomorphism of networking. So that they all things that I've done before. So learning a variant isn't that different. So I don't know. I think keeping your eye out for things that are potentially becoming popular, like maybe scripting languages on embedded systems is going to become a thing, and maybe MicroPython will take off, or people will start using Node.js on perish the thought, but Node.js on embedded systems or something like that. It's good to be aware of that stuff, but I don't think I'd go out of my way and say, you know what, Node.js is where it's at for embedded systems in 5 years, so I'm going to go learn that, so I'll be ahead of the game, because you're likely to be wrong. So if you want to learn something, learn it because you want to learn it.
That's fair.
Yep.
Although, the ESP62, 8266.
ESP128-7539.
And the
582,
ESP32, which is the new one, are both pretty attractive, especially for their price.
Yeah, but yeah.
Svec?
Couple things. One is, I've been sort of at the low level of embedded software, so like 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit micros, bare metal, maybe an RTOS, maybe a homegrown RTOS, maybe a free RTOS, whatever. That's kind of been where I make my living, make my career. Embedded Linux has been a thing for a while, but now processors are continuing to get cheaper, and RAM and Flash are continuing to get more plentiful for similar prices. So I'm starting to I actually finally bought a Raspberry Pi. I'm probably the last working embedded engineer in the world to buy a Raspberry Pi, but I finally bought one and started to actually mess around with embedded Linux a little bit. We're starting to use it more and more at work, and so just we're going to go. I think our field's going to head that direction again, with just cost. Continuing to obey, if not Moore's law, then at least head that direction to get cheaper. So that's been a skill. The other far more general skill is just writing in general and how to explain things better. So I took a while off from doing the embedded systems and our embedded software engineering 101 thing, and I'm getting back into it now and remembering that, oh yes, it is a very difficult skill to explain what I understand. I think I understand very well. It's very difficult to explain those things to someone who has never seen it before. And so just working on that skill again through the blog and through some other stuff at work and outside of work.
I tend to agree with you that things are becoming cheaper, and I worry. I love the microprocessors, and I don't think that the Cortex M0s and M3s are going anywhere quickly. But I'm not seeing many 8-bits anymore. Not when these other ones are so cheap.
They'll come back. And
I worry that Linux, that we will be doing more embedded Linux, because you get these, $5 Linux computers and the software becomes trivial, and now you end up with other problems.
Power is always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Power is always, yes, and yet sometimes I see them and they're not as bad as I would expect. So I think that for me, I'm learning about bigger systems because it's an area that I find sort of frustrating and sort of interesting when I think about machine learning too. So machine learning and bigger systems are sort of on my radar. Although I totally understand where Elizabeth is coming from. I work on whatever's next. And that's what I do. That makes the most sense. That's how I got here. It's been good so far.
Well, it pays the bills as well. If the guy that comes through the door says, I need to do CAN bus, then you're going to learn about CAN bus.
Probably not, but that's okay. All right. Well, I just did a quick poll on the typing part of the show, which involves not much other than trying to get Andrei to say something funny. And everybody passed for final thoughts.
I didn't.
Except
Not
for
other Chris.
Christopher.
I have a final thought.
Who wants to close out show number 200 with a final thought.
So I very quickly, We started out this podcast and we said we were going to do 6 episodes.
Yep.
As just a
We
little,
just wanted to know what it was like.
just a little thing to see what it was like. And it's been 194 more after that because somehow we forgot. And
Just forgot to stop.
every week we do this, and sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy, but we never don't do it for some reason. I mean, we skip a week here or there, but it's become part of our routine in existence, and I think we both really enjoy doing it. And thank you for listening. And I just wanted to point out that today, while we're recording the 200th episode, we just crossed 1 million lifetime downloads
Wow.
Wow.
like 5 minutes ago.
That's awesome.
So there
Very
you go.
cool.
That is great.
very cool. All right. Well, it has been great to have all of you on the show and to be able to sort of celebrate our birthday. We didn't get cake, did we?
No.
We
We didn't get
should've.
it last time either.
I think last time we did.
That's for 256.
I'm not going to sing this time because you got creeped out last time.
No, you and Svec both have great singing voices.
What's happening now?
What? I don't understand.
I don't
I'll
understand.
need a
That's
They
drummer.
are the only two who have
That's-
ever sung on the program.
I sang.
Did I sing?
You did sing. That's right. Okay, well, the three
Oh,
of you
sure.
are here.
Laugh now.
Go ahead.
What are we singing?
Serenade us.
What?
What are we singing?
I don't know.
That's more than 5,000 downloads per episode, so that's awesome on average.
Yeah,
I
you're
just
going to
did the
lose listeners if we start singing.
Only if
And
I
with
start
that-
singing. And with that, thank you all for listening. If you want more information about our fabulous guests, including Elizabeth Brenner, Alvaro Prieto, Andrei Chichak, Christopher Svec, or Christopher White, or
I'm not
myself,
a guest. Oh,
Get out.
there will be more information in the show notes and links to their previous shows. Well, not
put
Not
links
me
to
and
all my previous shows.
not ours.
Embedded.fm.
And if this is the first time you've heard this episode or this show, welcome to Embedded FN. It's not always like this.
Sometimes it's worse.
That is true. No, that is false.
Cats.
Yeah, this. All right. And now I am going to choose a quote from Nikola Tesla to close the show with because, Chris is right. We do this, we kind of do it out of habit. We do it because we learn stuff. We do it because it's kind of neat. And we do it because you listen. So thank you. What we want now is closer contact and better understanding between individuals and communities all over the earth, and the elimination of egoism and pride, which is always prone to plunge the world into primeval barbarism and strife. Peace can only come as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment.
This is Chris Gammell, and I'm from Contextual Electronics and the Amp Hour podcast. And I'm really honored that you guys included me here today, and I'm really glad to be part of the group. And I can't wait to record. Hello, guys.